Okay, let's read paragraph 6 and 7 because 6 is too short. So we'll combine two paragraphs in this video. Let's read first. From the serfs of the Middle Ages sprang the chartered burghers of the earliest towns. From these burgesses, the first elements of the bourgeoisie were developed. Again, Karl Marx is describing the development of the bourgeois class. And he says that there were serfs in Middle Age. Who is a serf? A serf is a person who tills or cultivates the land given by a feudal lord, but who does not own the land and who works, let's say, in a sense, free of cost for the landlord. And in return, the landlord gives him social protection and also maybe some means of survival, but he is like a slave. So, from the serfs of the Middle Ages, from the class of the serfs of the Middle Ages, sprang the chartered burghers of the earliest town. So, let's check the word chartered burgher in Bing search. Okay, here we have the result. A chartered burger. Let me share the screen for you. You may not have seen it. I just did a Bing search to understand the word chartered burger. You can also use Bing search when you eat at home. A chartered burger is an inhabitant of a town that had a charter or a grant of privileges from a feudal lord or a monarch. The chartered burghers were the predecessors of the bourgeoisie. See the word bourgeoisie comes from the, I guess, burger. The class that owned the means of production and dominated the modern society. Marx and Engels argued that the chartered burghers emerged from the serfs of the Middle Ages who gained some economic and political rights by living in town. The chartered burghers later developed into merchants, manufacturers, and industrialists who expanded their markets and wealth through trade, colonization, and innovation. Look how minutely Karl Marx is analyzing the development of the class. So let's come back to our text and let's save this text. Otherwise, yes. So from the serfs of the Middle Ages sprang the chartered burghers of the earliest towns. So the class of the serfs developed into the class of the chartered burghers. And who were the chartered burghers? Pay attention. Let me share. Who were the chartered burghers? Once again, I'm reading. Chartered burghers were the inhabitants of a town, people living in town. And they had a charter or a grant or privilege from the feudal lord or a monarch. They were given some rights. These people, these serfs who came to live in the town, they were given some privileges or rights by the lord or the monarch. And these burghers were from whom the bourgeois class developed. So these burghers were first and the bourgeois were second who developed. Or in a sense, these burghers, chartered burghers who had privileged right given by the monarch or the lord, they were the predecessors of the bourgeois. And the more thing to understand is that these chartered burghers, they owned some means of production like land. And then in time, these burghers developed in a dominant society class, right? And they dominated the society, right? And so the point to understand is that these chartered burghers emerged from the serfs of the Middle Ages. And how did they emerge? These serfs of the Middle Ages developed into chartered burghers because they gained some privileges, some rights, or some economic and political rights by living in the towns. And later, these burghers living in the towns, they developed into small merchants or businessmen. They developed into small manufacturers. They developed into industrialists. And gradually, these serfs who developed into charter burghers, then who developed into merchants, manufacturers, and industrialists, they expanded their market. They expanded their wealth through trade, colonization, and innovation. And from these serfs or from these chartered burghers, the modern bourgeois sprouted or developed. So, do you see how beautifully, how clearly, how with what detail and precision Karl Marx uh, explains the development of the modern bourgeois class from the serfs? Let's read. From the serfs of the Middle Ages sprang the chartered burghers of the earliest towns. From these burgesses, the first elements of the bourgeoisie were developed. So, once again, let me wrap up. So, these serfs came to live in the burgesses or small towns. They had special privilege or rights granted by the feudal lords or monarchs, and then they were given some means of production like land. That means they have some money also. They began to live in the town and they started doing merchandise, business, manufacturing. They started doing business or uh, manufacturing. They also opened industries, and then gradually they began to sell in the market and they began to gain money or wealth, and they developed trade. They earned money through trade, colonization, and innovation. And this is how the bourgeois class developed. I stop here. I'll move to next paragraph 7 in next video.